No one could handle the billionaire's daughter, until a waitress did the impossible. What if the most difficult child in the world could teach a billionaire the most important lesson of his life? In the corner booth of Maple Grove Diner, a small figure sat with arms crossed, glaring at anyone who dared approach. 8-year-old Sophia had already made 3 waitresses cry that morning, thrown her pancakes on the floor, and declared the orange juice stupid. Her father, tech mogul Harrison Blake, sat across from her, exhaustion etched deep in his 42-year-old face. He'd built an empire worth billions, commanded respect in boardrooms across the globe, but couldn't figure out how to connect with his own daughter. Ever since the divorce 6 months ago, Sophia had become increasingly angry, pushing away everyone who tried to help. Harrison had tried everything: expensive therapists, fancy boarding schools, even a parade of nannies who all quit within weeks. Nothing worked. But today, something different was about to happen in this small-town diner that would change everything. "Where are you watching from? I'd love to know." Harrison Blake wasn't supposed to be in a place like Maple Grove Diner. His usual breakfast meetings happened in 5-star hotels with crystal glasses and servers who knew better than to speak unless spoken to. But here he was, having driven 3 hours from the city after Sophia's latest meltdown at the exclusive private school he'd enrolled her in. The principal had called that morning, voice tight with frustration, explaining that Sophia had barricaded herself in the art room and refused to come out until her father arrived. The diner buzzed with the comfortable chatter of locals, farmers discussing weather patterns, elderly couples sharing coffee and newspapers, young mothers corralling energetic toddlers. It was the kind of place Harrison had forgotten existed, where people knew each other's names and stories. He checked his phone constantly, fielding urgent calls from his assistant about a merger that could wait, board meetings that seemed suddenly trivial, and stock prices that fluctuated like his patience. Sophia, meanwhile, had perfected the art of making grown-ups uncomfortable. She'd already informed the elderly man at the next table that his cologne smelled like dead flowers, told a young mother that her baby was too loud, and somehow managed to stack sugar packets into a fortress around her untouched plate. Her dark curls were pulled into a messy ponytail, her school uniform wrinkled from the morning's dramatic exit, and her green eyes held a hurt so deep it made Harrison's chest ache. "Sophia, please just try to eat something," Harrison said quietly, glancing around at the other diners who were beginning to stare. "I don't want to," she replied, her voice carrying that particular tone that had become all too familiar. Defiant, angry, but underneath it all, desperately sad. "I want to go home. Real home. With Mom." The words hit Harrison like a physical blow. There was no real home anymore. The sprawling mansion felt empty without his ex-wife Rebecca's laughter echoing through the halls. The staff walked on eggshells, afraid to engage with Sophia after too many incidents. Even the family dog seemed depressed, spending most days hiding under furniture. As Harrison struggled to find words that might reach his daughter, a new waitress approached their table. She moved with quiet confidence, her uniform neat but well-worn, her smile genuine despite the chaos surrounding their booth. The waitress couldn't have been much older than 35, with kind eyes and calloused hands that spoke of hard work and determination. Her name tag read Beth, and unlike the previous servers who'd approached their table with nervous energy, she seemed completely unfazed by Sophia's fortress of sugar packets and the syrup she'd deliberately spilled across the table. "Well now," Beth said, surveying the scene with what appeared to be genuine interest rather than judgment. "Looks like someone's building something pretty impressive here. Mind if I take a look?" Sophia's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "It's not for grown-ups." "Good thing I'm not really a grown-up then," Beth replied seriously, crouching down to Sophia's eye level. "I'm actually a professional fort inspector. This is clearly advanced architecture. What kind of defenses does it have?" For the first time in months, Harrison saw something flicker across his daughter's face that wasn't anger or sadness. Curiosity, maybe even the ghost of a smile. "It's got sugar walls and syrup moats," Sophia said slowly, testing whether this new adult could be trusted with such crucial information. Beth nodded gravely. "Excellent design choices. Very sticky, very effective. I bet dragons couldn't get past those defenses." Harrison watched in amazement as his daughter actually giggled, a sound he'd almost forgotten. But his relief was short-lived. His phone rang, the harsh sound shattering the moment like glass. The caller ID showed his head of operations, and Harrison knew it meant the Singapore deal was falling apart. "I have to take this," he muttered, stepping away from the table. The moment he moved away, Sophia's walls went back up. She swept the sugar packets onto the floor with one violent motion, her face closing off again. "See. He always leaves. Everyone always leaves." Beth didn't flinch at the scattered packets or the pain in Sophia's voice. Instead, she sat down in Harrison's empty chair, her movements slow and deliberate. "You know what I think. I think your dad's scared." "Scared?" Sophia scoffed. "He's not scared of anything. He's rich and important." "Being rich and important doesn't protect you from being scared," Beth said quietly. "Sometimes it makes the scary stuff even scarier." If this moment touched your heart, please give the video a thumbs up. Harrison returned to find his daughter listening intently to something Beth was saying about butterfly wings and how they're stronger when they're not trying so hard to be perfect. But before he could ask what he'd missed, his phone rang again. The second phone call shattered whatever fragile peace had been building. Harrison's face went pale as he listened to his lawyer explain that Rebecca's attorneys were filing for full custody. They were using his inability to provide a stable environment as grounds, citing Sophia's behavioral problems at 3 different schools in 6 months. "I'm sorry, I have to go," Harrison said to Beth, his voice tight with panic. "There's been a development with my daughter's custody case." But as he reached for Sophia's hand, she pulled away sharply. "No. I'm not going anywhere with you." The entire diner fell silent. Sophia's voice cracked with 8 years of accumulated hurt, and suddenly she wasn't just an angry child throwing a tantrum. She was a little girl whose world had been torn apart, who'd lost everything stable and safe, who was watching her father choose phone calls and business deals over breakfast with her once again. "Sweetheart, please," Harrison said, desperation creeping into his voice. "We need to go handle this legal thing so we can stay together." "Together?" Sophia's laugh was bitter, far too mature for her age. "You're never together with me. You're always somewhere else, even when you're sitting right here." Beth stood slowly, and Harrison expected her to step back, to let this family drama play out without getting involved. Instead, she knelt beside Sophia's chair. "You know what I learned about butterfly wings?" she said softly, as if the entire diner wasn't watching. "Sometimes they get torn. And when they do, the butterfly has to decide whether to keep flying anyway or to just stop. But here's the secret, the torn places can heal stronger than they were before." Sophia's angry facade cracked. What if they're too torn? What if they can't fly anymore? "Then they wait," Beth said simply. "They rest somewhere safe until they remember that flying is what they were made for." Harrison felt something break open in his chest as he watched his daughter's lip tremble. 4 months, he'd been trying to fix everything. The custody battle, the school problems, Sophia's anger, through lawyers and money and force. But this waitress in a small-town diner was offering something he'd forgotten how to give: patience. Presence. The simple act of staying. Have you ever faced something like this? Let us know in the comments. His phone rang again, but this time Harrison looked at the screen and made a choice that surprised everyone, most of all himself. He turned the phone off and sat back down. "The Singapore deal can wait," Harrison said quietly, his voice stronger than it had been all morning. "My daughter can't." Sophia stared at him in shock. In her 8 years of life, she'd never seen her father turn off his phone during business hours. She'd grown up believing that conference calls and board meetings were more important than bedtime stories and scraped knees. Beth smiled and moved to clear the sugar packets from the floor, but Sophia suddenly reached out to stop her. "Wait. Can we build it again? Together this time." What happened next felt like watching ice thaw in spring sunlight. Harrison slid out of his side of the booth and squeezed in next to Sophia, his expensive suit looking completely out of place against the worn vinyl seat. He picked up a sugar packet with hands more accustomed to signing multi-million-dollar contracts, and carefully placed it where his daughter directed. "The walls need to be exactly 3 packets high," Sophia explained seriously, "or the dragons will see over them." "Dragons," Harrison repeated, as if he were learning an important business principle. "Of course. What else should I know about dragon defense?" For the first time in 6 months, father and daughter worked on something together. Not homework forced by tutors, not structured activities planned by nannies, but the simple, silly task of building a sugar packet fort in a small-town diner. Beth brought them more packets without being asked, and even contributed architectural advice about moat placement and drawbridge engineering. The other diners gradually returned to their own conversations, but many watched with small smiles as the famous billionaire learned about dragons from his 8-year-old daughter. Harrison found himself really listening, not just waiting for his turn to speak or checking his phone, but actually hearing Sophia's elaborate mythology about different dragon types and their specific weaknesses. "The purple dragons are the trickiest," Sophia said, placing the final packet with ceremonial importance. "They pretend to be nice, but they're really just waiting to take your treasure." Harrison's throat tightened as he understood what she was really saying. Purple dragons were like all the people in their world who smiled at Sophia because of who her father was, who wanted something from the family fortune, who disappeared when things got difficult. If you've been enjoying this story, subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales. But then Sophia looked up at him with eyes that held just a flicker of hope. "Daddy, are you a purple dragon?" The question hung in the air like morning mist, delicate and profound. Harrison felt years of rushed goodnight kisses, missed recitals, and postponed promises settle heavily on his shoulders. He could give Sophia the easy answer, the one that would smooth things over temporarily. But something about the quiet courage she'd shown in asking made him want to be brave too. "Sometimes I think I might have been," he said honestly. "I got so worried about protecting our treasure that I forgot the most important treasure was sitting right here with me." Sophia studied his face with the intense scrutiny only children possess, looking for the truth beneath his words. Slowly, carefully, she reached into her backpack and pulled out something that made Harrison's breath catch. It was a photo of them together from last Christmas. Before the divorce papers, before the custody battles, before everything fell apart. In the picture, they were both laughing at something Rebecca had said while taking the photo. Sophia had been carrying it with her all this time. "I kept this," she whispered, "because I wanted to remember when you used to smile at me like that." Harrison's carefully constructed composure finally crumbled. He pulled his daughter close, and for the first time in months, she didn't pull away. She melted into him like she used to when she was smaller, when a hug from Daddy could fix any problem in the world. Beth quietly refilled Harrison's coffee and left a small piece of paper beside his cup. When he looked at it, he found a simple drawing, a butterfly with slightly torn wings, still flying. At the bottom, she'd written, "Some things heal stronger after they break." Over the next hour, Harrison called his lawyer and instructed him to propose a different custody arrangement, one focused on what Sophia needed rather than what would win in court. He called his assistant and cleared his schedule for the rest of the week. Most importantly, he called Rebecca and asked if they could all have dinner together, not to fight about custody or blame each other for their failures, but to figure out how to be the kind of divorced parents Sophia deserved. When they finally left the diner, Sophia carefully carried their sugar packet fort in a to-go container that Beth had given her. "For my room," she explained. "So I can remember that we built something together." Harrison left a $100 tip and his business card with a note on the back. "Thank you for reminding me what really matters. If you ever want to change careers, I know someone who could use a consultant on dragon defense." As they walked to the car, Sophia slipped her small hand into his. "Daddy, next weekend, can we come back here? Just us." Harrison squeezed her hand gently. "Every weekend, if you want. We've got some catching up to do." If you enjoyed this story, please remember to like, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more heartwarming tales. Thank you for joining us on this journey of healing and hope.